Have you ever wondered what walked the earth before us? I'm not just talking about dinosaurs. I mean creatures so ancient, so bizarre, they seem like they're from another planet. Welcome to a journey back in time, to an Earth you wouldn't recognize. An Earth of vast, steaming swamps, fiery volcanic plains, and oceans that held secrets we're still uncovering. This was the dawn of life, a brutal, chaotic era where survival was a daily battle. Imagine a world constantly reshaped by meteor strikes, drastic climate shifts, and continents crashing into one another. Life was fragile. Species would appear, thrive for a while, and then vanish in the blink of a geological eye. This wasn't a gentle process. Extinction was the rule, not the exception. The animal kingdom rose and fell over and over again, leaving behind a silent, fossilized record of its struggles. No history books were written, no stories were told. The only witness was the earth itself, which carefully preserved the bones and imprints of these lost worlds. These early extinctions weren't just tragedies, they were turning points. They carved the path of evolution, deciding which life forms would get a chance to move forward and which would be erased forever. This is the story of those forgotten beasts, the creatures lost to time, swallowed by the relentless forces of nature. Our story begins not on land, but deep beneath the waves. In an ancient ocean that covered most of the planet, here lived the trilobites. If you think dinosaurs had a long reign, think again. Trilobites dominated the seas for an astonishing 270 million years. They were the undisputed kings of the primordial oceans. Their bodies were covered in intricate, segmented armor, a natural shield against the predators of their time. They were everywhere, scuttling across seabeds from pole to pole. You can find their fossils on every continent today, a testament to their incredible success. They witnessed the birth and death of entire mountain ranges. But even the greatest empires must fall. The world above their watery kingdom was changing. Volcanoes erupted with unimaginable fury, spewing ash and gas that choked the skies and altered the chemistry of the oceans. The climate swung wildly from scorching hot to freezing cold. The seas, once a stable cradle of life, became a toxic, unpredictable soup. And the trilobites weren't alone anymore. New predators emerged from the evolutionary arms race faster, stronger, and more intelligent hunters that could crack through their once impenetrable armor. The oceans turned into a battlefield. The trilobites, who had thrived for so long by being resilient, suddenly found themselves unable to adapt. The water they breathed was poisoning them. Their food sources disappeared. Slowly, painstakingly, over thousands of years, their numbers dwindled. One by one, the last of their kind vanished from the ocean floor. The extinction of the trilobites was a monumental event. It was the end of one of the longest and most successful dynasties in the history of life. The oceans fell silent, and the world moved on, leaving its first great rulers to turn to stone. Now let's fast forward a couple 100 million years. The land is covered in lush, giant forests. The air is thick, warm, and buzzing with enormous insects. And walking beneath the canopy of giant ferns are the true titans of Earth, the dinosaurs. For 150 million years, they were the masters of this planet. From the colossal, plant-eating Argentinosaurus A creature so massive its footsteps would have shaken the ground like an earthquake. To the terrifying Tyrannosaurus rex, a predator so perfect it has haunted our nightmares for centuries. They were an incredible success story of adaptation. Dinosaurs conquered every environment, from dense jungles to arid deserts. They came in all shapes and sizes, from creatures smaller than a chicken to behemoths longer than a blue whale. They were intelligent, social animals that raised their young, hunted in packs, and ruled the vibrant, living world. It must have seemed like their reign would last forever. But 66 million years ago, the sky fell. A 6-mile-wide asteroid, traveling at unimaginable speed, slammed into the coast of modern-day Mexico. The impact was more powerful than all the world's nuclear weapons combined. It triggered a global cataclysm. A shockwave flattened forests for thousands of miles. Giant tsunamis washed over continents. The sky was filled with superheated rock and dust, blocking out the sun for years. This plunged the Earth into a long, dark winter. Plants, unable to photosynthesize, withered and died. The great plant-eating dinosaurs, deprived of their food, starved. And soon after, the carnivores who hunted them followed. It wasn't a slow decline. It was an apocalypse. Within a geological instant, 75% of all species on Earth were wiped out. The age of dinosaurs was over. They weren't defeated by a stronger competitor or a changing climate. They were erased by a random, cosmic catastrophe. Their sudden disappearance left a void, a massive power vacuum on a devastated planet. And from the ashes of their fallen empire, a new kind of animal would rise. In the shadow of the dinosaurs, a small, furry creature scurried through the undergrowth. For millions of years, mammals had been living on the sidelines, small, nocturnal, and just trying to avoid being eaten. The world belonged to the giant reptiles. But when the asteroid struck and the dinosaurs vanished, everything changed. The age of mammals began. With the great predators gone, mammals could finally step out of the shadows and into the sunlight. They exploded in diversity, evolving into a spectacular array of forms. Imagine a rhinoceros this size of a 2-story house that was the Proceritherium, the largest land mammal that ever lived. Or picture a saber-toothed cat, the Smilodon, with canines like daggers, built for taking down giant prey. There were sloths as big as elephants, and armadillos the size of a small car. This was a world of mammalian megafauna, a time when our furry ancestors grew to monstrous sizes. This era, known as the Cenozoic, was a grand experiment. Mammals took to the land, the seas, and the air. Whales evolved from land-dwelling creatures, and bats took to the night sky. But this world of giants was not destined to last either. The planet's climate began to change once more. A series of ice ages gripped the globe, locking vast amounts of water into glaciers. Lush forests retreated, replaced by cold, dry grasslands. The giant mammals, who needed huge amounts of food to survive, began to struggle. Their massive size, once an advantage, became a liability in a world with dwindling resources. And then a new, even more formidable predator appeared on the scene: us. Early humans, with their intelligence, tool-making abilities, and cooperative hunting strategies, were incredibly effective hunters. The slow, giant beasts were no match for them. Whether it was the changing climate, human hunting, or a combination of both, the result was the same. One by one, the magnificent megafauna disappeared, leaving behind only their giant bones. So, where are the great extinctions of our time? Look around. Scientists agree that we are currently living through the sixth mass extinction in Earth's history. But this one is different. It's not being caused by an asteroid or a volcano. It's being caused by us. The dodo, the passenger pigeon, the Tasmanian tiger, these are just a few of the thousands of species that have vanished in recent centuries. Deforestation, pollution, climate change, and overhunting are pushing countless more to the brink. From the majestic Sumatran rhino to the vibrant golden toad, we are losing species at a rate 1,000 times faster than the natural background rate. The stories of the trilobites and the dinosaurs feel distant, like ancient history. But the story of our planet's current extinction crisis is unfolding right now, in our lifetime. The Earth has recovered from mass extinctions before. Life is resilient. After the dinosaurs died out, it took millions of years for ecosystems to recover and for new forms of life to flourish. The planet will survive this. The real question is, will we? We are intricately connected to the web of life. The extinction of other species directly impacts our own survival, affecting everything from the air we breathe to the food we eat. The fossil record teaches us a powerful lesson. No species, no matter how dominant or successful, is guaranteed to last forever. We are the first species in the history of life to understand the concept of extinction, and we are also the first species to be the primary cause of one. Forget T-Rex for a moment and picture something even stranger, something that came from the deep, dark waters of the ancient past, long before humans, even before the first great lizards. Our planet's shallow oceans were the hunting grounds of a true titan, the giant sea scorpion. These weren't your average scorpions. Imagine a creature longer than a grown man, covered head to tail in thick, natural armor. They were the apex predators of their time, gliding through the warm, primordial seas with massive, crushing claws ready to snap shut on anything that crossed their path. For millions of years, they were the undisputed kings of the underwater world. Nothing could challenge their reign. They were a perfect design for their environment, an evolutionary masterpiece of terrifying proportions. But as we know, no kingdom lasts forever. The Earth itself began to change. The slow, unstoppable dance of tectonic plates shifted the continents, altering coastlines and draining the vast, shallow seas these giants called home. The warm, tropical waters they depended on started to shrink, becoming cooler and less hospitable. Their world was literally disappearing from beneath them. At the same time, a new challenger entered the scene: early fish. These newcomers were faster, more agile, and better adapted to the changing conditions. They began to outcompete the sea scorpions for food and territory. The once mighty predators found themselves pushed into smaller and smaller pockets of their old habitat, struggling to survive. Their greatest strength, their immense size, soon became their greatest weakness, a body that large demands an incredible amount of energy. It needs a constant supply of food to function. But in a world becoming more unstable, with prey becoming scarcer, Their massive frames were simply too costly to maintain. As the seas cooled further, the smaller creatures they hunted vanished almost completely. The giant sea scorpions, unable to evolve quickly enough to cope with the rapid changes, faced a slow, agonizing end. They were titans built for a world that no longer existed. One by one, they starved into extinction. Today, all that remains are their fossilized impressions in ancient rock, whispering stories of a time when monstrous arthropods ruled the oceans. Nature, in its quiet, relentless way, had closed the chapter on one of its most fearsome creations, making way for the next age of giants. Now, let's leave the ancient oceans and step onto dry land. A new era was dawning, long before the familiar shapes of dinosaurs would appear. The Earth was a single, massive supercontinent called Pangaea, covered in humid, lush forests of giant ferns and strange, alien-looking trees. And roaming these primeval landscapes were the new rulers of the planet, the Titan reptiles. These weren't sleek, fast-moving dinosaurs. Think bigger, bulkier, and in some ways, even more powerful. These were massive, heavily built reptilian beasts, some walking on four pillar-like legs, others rearing up to challenge their rivals. Their jaws were biological crushing machines, strong enough to shatter ancient wood and bone with ease. They were the undisputed masters of the land, the top of the food chain in a world teeming with life. For millions of years, they thrived in this warm, wet paradise. But just like the sea scorpions before them, their dominance was not destined to last. The world was once again growing unstable. The supercontinent was a hotbed of geological activity. Massive, world-changing volcanic eruptions began to tear the land apart. These weren't just mountains spewing lava. These were fissures in the Earth's crust that bled fire for centuries, releasing unimaginable amounts of ash and gas into the atmosphere. A thick, dark veil of volcanic dust spread across the globe, blocking out the sun's light and warmth. Global temperatures plummeted. The lush, green forests that fed this entire ecosystem withered and died in the sudden, artificial winter. The massive herbivores, the plant-eaters that formed the base of the food pyramid, suddenly had nothing to eat. Their colossal bodies, which needed hundreds of pounds of vegetation every single day, began to fail. And as the herbivores starved, so too did the giant carnivores that hunted them. The entire ecosystem collapsed like a house of cards. Predators and prey alike succumbed to the immense pressure of a world without food, a world plunged into cold and darkness. The age of the Titan reptiles didn't fade away slowly. It ended with shocking suddenness in one of Earth's first and most devastating mass extinction events. Their reign was over. Their bodies were buried under layers of ash and sediment, their bones slowly turning to stone deep beneath the soil we walk on today. They became part of the deep history of our planet, a lost world of giants. But their fall was not just an ending. It was also a beginning. By clearing the stage, their extinction paved the way for a new dynasty of giants to rise from the ashes. A dynasty we all know and love, the dinosaurs. So, what can we learn from these two lost worlds? The stories of the sea scorpions and the Titan reptiles are a powerful reminder of a fundamental truth about life on Earth. Nothing is permanent. Even the most dominant, most powerful creatures can be brought down by forces far beyond their control. The planet is always changing, and life must either adapt or disappear. These extinctions weren't just random acts of destruction. They were crucial turning points in the story of life. Each time a dominant group fell, it created an opportunity, a vacuum that new and different forms of life could rush in to fill. The end of the sea scorpions allowed fish to flourish and eventually crawl onto land. The end of the titan reptiles allowed the dinosaurs to evolve into the incredible diversity of forms we see in the fossil record. These ancient apocalypses are a part of a grand, cyclical pattern of death and rebirth that has shaped our planet for hundreds of millions of years. And in a way, we owe our own existence to them. The fall of the dinosaurs, the next great extinction, cleared the way for small, furry mammals to emerge from the shadows and eventually evolve into us. The fossils of these long-lost monsters are more than just curiosities in a museum. They are a history book written in stone, telling a dramatic tale of power, collapse, and renewal. They show us that the Earth is a dynamic and sometimes violent place, but also one of incredible resilience and endless possibility. The next time you see a fossil, remember the epic story. It represents a story of a world ruled by giants and the quiet, inevitable power of change that brought their empires to an end. Imagine a world ruled by giants, a time when colossal creatures roamed the earth, dominating every corner of the planet. For over 160 million years, this was the reality. This was the age of the dinosaurs. From the moment they first emerged, dinosaurs became the most successful group of animals our world has ever known. They weren't just one type of creature. They were an incredibly diverse family. Think of the mighty sauropods, like Argentinosaurus, whose necks stretched towards the sky, weighing as much as a dozen elephants. They were the largest land animals in history, gentle giants peacefully munching on treetops. Then there were the predators, the stuff of nightmares and legends. Tyrannosaurus rex, with its bone-crushing jaws, was the apex predator of its time, a perfectly evolved killing machine. But it wasn't alone. Raptors, like Velociraptor and Deinonychus, were smaller, faster, and hunted in packs, using their terrifying sickle-shaped claws to take down prey much larger than themselves. The diversity was simply staggering. There were armored dinosaurs, like Ankylosaurus, a living tank covered in bony plates with a club at the end of its tail. Triceratops, with its 3 iconic horns and massive frill, was a formidable herbivore, ready to defend itself against any threat. From the deserts to the lush jungles, from the polar regions to the equator, dinosaurs adapted and thrived. They ruled the land, but their influence didn't stop there. In the oceans, colossal marine reptiles like the Mosasaurus patrolled the depths, while above, a different kind of ruler commanded the skies. For 160 million years, their reign seemed unbreakable, an empire of flesh and bone that stretched across geological eras. They survived climate shifts, volcanic eruptions, and the constant struggle for survival. They were the undisputed masters of Earth. But every great empire must fall. And for the dinosaurs, the end came not with a whimper, but with a cataclysmic bang that would change the course of life on this planet forever. It all happened 66 million years ago. From the depths of space, a celestial killer was on a collision course with Earth. An asteroid estimated to be at least 6 miles wide. A mountain of rock hurtling through the cosmos at unimaginable speed. It struck the planet in what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, unleashing energy equivalent to billions of atomic bombs. The moment of impact was apocalyptic, a blinding flash of light, followed by a shockwave that flattened forests for thousands of miles in every direction. Earthquakes of unimaginable magnitude shook the entire globe, triggering volcanic eruptions and tsunamis hundreds of feet high that swept across continents. But the immediate devastation was only the beginning. The impact blasted trillions of tons of pulverized rock, dust, and sulfur into the atmosphere. This dense cloud spread around the planet, enveloping it in a shroud of darkness. The sun, the source of all life, was blocked out. An impact winter began. Temperatures plummeted across the globe, bringing on a worldwide deep freeze. Without sunlight, plants couldn't photosynthesize. Forests withered and died. The entire foundation of the food chain collapsed. The great herbivores, the sauropods and hadrosaurs that depended on a constant supply of vegetation, were the first to starve. Their massive bodies required enormous amounts of food, and in this new, dark, and barren world, there was nothing for them to eat. As the herbivores perished, the predators soon followed. A T-Rex couldn't survive without its prey. The fearsome carnivores, once at the top of the food chain, now found themselves starving in the freezing darkness. Scarcity turned the world into a brutal battlefield for the last remaining scraps of food. It was a slow, agonizing end. Wildfires, ignited by the heat of the impact, raged across the globe, burning what little vegetation remained. Acid rain, formed from the sulfur thrown into the atmosphere, poisoned the lakes, rivers, and oceans. The world had become a toxic, frozen wasteland. Within a few thousand years, a geological blink of an eye, the reign of the non-avian dinosaurs was over. From the mightiest T-Rex to the smallest Compsognathus, they vanished from the face of the earth. An empire that stood for 160 million years was wiped out, leaving behind only fossilized bones as a testament to their incredible time on our planet. But the dinosaurs weren't the only masters of the prehistoric world to face extinction. While they ruled the land, another group of extraordinary reptiles had conquered the skies. These were the pterosaurs. Often mistaken for dinosaurs, they were a distinct group of flying reptiles, the very first vertebrates to achieve powered flight, and they were magnificent. Long before the first bird took to the air, pterosaurs soared through the Mesozoic skies. Their evolution was a marvel. Their wings weren't made of feathers, but of a leathery membrane of skin and muscle that stretched from an incredibly elongated fourth finger all the way to their ankles. Their diversity was just as impressive as their land-based cousins. There were small, nimble pterosaurs like Anuronithis, which likely flitted through forests hunting insects, much like bats do today. Then there were the seafaring hunters, like Tranodon, with its distinctive head crest, gliding effortlessly over the oceans, plunging down to snatch fish from the surface with its long, toothless beak. And then there was the king of the skies, Quetzalcoatlus. This was the largest flying creature of all time. Standing on the ground, it was as tall as a giraffe. Its wingspan could reach up to 36 feet, as wide as a small airplane. It is hard to even imagine such a creature launching itself into the air and soaring above the heads of tyrannosaurs. For millions of years, pterosaurs were the undisputed masters of the air. They were agile, efficient hunters, engaging in dramatic aerial pursuits. Their bones were hollow, like those of modern birds, making them incredibly lightweight for their size. This adaptation was key to their flight, but it also made them fragile. They were perfectly suited for their world, a world of warm climates and abundant food, and that was their downfall. When the asteroid struck, the same catastrophe that doomed the dinosaurs sealed the fate of the pterosaurs. The sky, their kingdom, turned against them. The endless darkness that enveloped the planet was devastating. The collapse of ecosystems on land and in the sea meant their food sources vanished almost overnight. The insects that smaller pterosaurs hunted disappeared. The fish populations that the larger pterosaurs relied on collapsed as the oceans became toxic and cold. For giants like Quetzalcoatlus, the situation was impossible. Their massive bodies required a constant, reliable food supply. In a world plunged into a nuclear winter, there was simply nothing left for them to hunt. Unlike some small, feathered dinosaurs, the pterosaurs couldn't adapt. Their specialized bodies and large size made them vulnerable to the rapid, catastrophic changes. They were creatures of sunlight and warmth, and they couldn't survive in a world of darkness and ice. Within a few decades of the impact, their glorious reign in the sky was over. They vanished completely, leaving no direct descendants. The sky has never again seen rulers as large or as magnificent as the pterosaurs. Today, all we have are their fossilized remains, whispers of a time when giants flew. So, when we look at the world today, what is the legacy of these incredible creatures? The mass extinction event was a great reset button for life on Earth. With the giant reptiles gone, the world was empty. The dominant niches were vacant. This gave a tiny, shrew-like group of animals the chance they needed. These were our ancestors, the early mammals. For millions of years, they had lived in the shadows of the dinosaurs, small, nocturnal creatures just trying to survive. But in the post-apocalyptic world, their small size, warm-blooded nature, and adaptable diet became a winning combination. They survived the cold and the scarcity, and in the absence of giants, they began to diversify, evolve, and eventually give rise to the vast array of mammals we see today, including us. But the story of the dinosaurs doesn't end entirely with extinction. One small branch of the dinosaur family tree did survive. They were small, feathered theropods. Over millions of years, they had evolved into something new, something we see every single day. They are the birds. That's right, every pigeon on the sidewalk, every eagle soaring in the sky, is a direct descendant of the dinosaurs. They are living dinosaurs. They carry the genetic legacy of those ancient rulers in their hollow bones and their bipedal stance. They are the sole survivors of a lost world, a beautiful, living reminder of the incredible reign of the dinosaurs. The story of the rise and fall of the dinosaurs and pterosaurs is more than just a tale of ancient monsters. It's a powerful lesson about life on Earth, It shows us how dominant and successful life can be, but also how fragile it is. It reminds us that even the mightiest empires can be brought down by a single, catastrophic event from the heavens. And it shows us that from the ashes of destruction, new life can emerge, persevere, and thrive in unexpected ways. The world of the dinosaurs is gone forever, but their legacy surrounds us. In the birds that fill our skies, and in the very fact that we are here to tell their story. It's a story of changing worlds, new competition, and epic struggles for survival. Let's start our journey in the ancient oceans, a time when dinosaurs had just vanished from the land, leaving a massive power vacuum. So, picture this. The dinosaurs are gone, but the seas are anything but empty. In fact, they're ruled by a new set of titans. These weren't dinosaurs, but enormous marine reptiles, true sea monsters that would make a great white shark look like a guppy. We're talking about creatures like the mosasaur, a colossal lizard with a powerful tail and a jaw full of razor-sharp teeth. They could grow up to 60 feet long, the size of a modern sperm whale, and were the undisputed kings of the sea. Then you had the plesiosaurs, with their famously long necks and paddle-like flippers, elegantly but deadly, hunting fish and squid in the vast open waters. These apex hunters were at the very top of the food chain. They could devour pretty much anything they came across. For millions of years, they were the law of the ocean. It must have seemed like their reign would last forever. But as we know, nothing in nature stays the same. The world was changing, and a new challenger was rising from the depths. This new threat wasn't a single creature, but an entire lineage that was evolving and adapting faster than anyone could have predicted. I'm talking about sharks. While sharks had been around for a long time, new, more advanced species were emerging. These were faster, more agile, and incredibly efficient predators. They began to compete directly with the giant marine reptiles for food and territory. The once uncontested rulers of the ocean now had serious rivals. The pressure was mounting, but competition was only one piece of the puzzle. The planet itself was turning against them. Global climate change began to alter the oceans dramatically. The warm, shallow seas that these giant reptiles thrived in started to shrink and cool. These were cold-blooded animals, meaning they relied on the warmth of the water to regulate their body temperature and maintain their metabolism. As their habitats disappeared, so did their ability to survive. But wait, there's more. The very chemistry of the ocean was shifting. Oxygen levels were on the rise. Now, you might think more oxygen is a good thing, right? Well, it is if you're built for speed. Higher oxygen levels supercharge the metabolism of the newer, more agile hunters like those evolving sharks, giving them an extra edge in speed and endurance. The lumbering marine reptiles, built for power rather than sustained speed, simply couldn't keep up. The world was literally passing them by. And if all that wasn't enough, there was one final, devastating blow. Marine reptiles, like many reptiles today, laid eggs or gave birth to live young that were extremely vulnerable. As new, smaller, and quicker predators emerged in this changing ecosystem, the eggs and babies of the once mighty sea lizards became an easy and abundant food source. Imagine being a powerful mosasaur, but unable to protect your offspring from swarms of faster, more numerous predators. It was a battle they were losing on all fronts. Year after year, their populations dwindled. Fewer young survived to adulthood, and the old giants slowly died off. The pressure from competition, a changing climate, and predation on their young created a perfect storm of extinction. Eventually, they vanished completely from the Earth's oceans. Today, all that's left of these magnificent sea monsters are their fossilized bones. Buried deep in ancient underwater sediments, geologists and paleontologists unearth them in places that were once seabeds, giving us a glimpse into their lost world. But their disappearance wasn't just an end, it was also a beginning. By vanishing, they cleared the evolutionary stage. This massive ecological void allowed for the rise of the animals that dominate our oceans today. Modern sharks, no longer in the shadow of the giant reptiles, diversified and flourished. And eventually, a group of land mammals would return to the sea, evolving into the intelligent and majestic whales and dolphins we know and love. The fall of the marine lizards paved the way for the age of marine mammals. Now, let us leave the ancient oceans and fast forward to a much more recent time, the last ice age. This era produced some of the most bizarre and wonderful animals Earth has ever seen. Woolly mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and one of the strangest of them all, the giant ground sloth. When you think of a sloth, you probably picture the slow, sleepy creature hanging from a tree. Now, imagine one of those, but scaled up to the size of an elephant. That was the giant ground sloth. Some species, like Megatherium, could stand over 12 feet tall on their hind legs and weighed several tons. These were true giants. Despite their intimidating size, these were gentle herbivores. They roamed the grasslands and forests of North and South America, using their immense size and long claws not for hunting, but for pulling down tree branches to munch on leaves and bark. They were peaceful, slow-moving animals, living a tranquil existence for thousands of years. They were a successful and widespread group, seemingly perfectly adapted to their environment. But they were completely unaware of a new and uniquely dangerous predator that was just arriving on the continent. A predator that would change everything. This new species was, of course, us humans. As early humans spread out from Africa and across the globe, they eventually crossed the land bridge into the Americas. These were not just any wanderers, they were skilled, intelligent, and highly cooperative hunters. And when they arrived, they found a land filled with giant, slow-moving animals that had never encountered a predator like them before. The giant ground sloths, with their slow, lumbering gait, were an ideal target. They provided an enormous amount of meat, feeding a whole group of people for days or even weeks. For the first human hunters in the Americas, a giant sloth was a walking pantry. This new hunting pressure was devastating, but it wasn't happening in a vacuum. Just like the marine reptiles, the sloths also had to contend with a rapidly changing climate. The Ice Age was ending, glaciers were retreating, and the planet was warming up. This sounds nice, but for the sloths, it meant their habitats were changing faster than they could adapt. The forests and grasslands they depended on for food began to shift and shrink. So they were caught in a two-pronged attack. Their homes were disappearing, and they were being relentlessly hunted by a clever new predator. Their slow movements, once an advantage for a large herbivore with few enemies, now made them tragically easy targets. The combination of intense hunting and rapid habitat loss was simply too much for the giant sloths to handle. Within just a few thousand years of humans arriving in the Americas, their populations completely collapsed. This event marks one of the first and most dramatic examples of humans driving a megafauna species to extinction. It's a sobering reminder of the profound impact our species can have on the natural world. Unlike the dinosaurs, who were wiped out by an asteroid, the giant sloths were victims of climate change and us. All that remains of these gentle giants are their fossils, found perfectly preserved in places like caves and ancient tar pits, like the famous La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles. These fossils tell the story of their life and their sudden demise. With their extinction, the world lost one of its most unique and gentle giants forever. We can only imagine what it would have been like to see one of these colossal, slow-moving creatures peacefully browsing on the leaves of a tree. Their story is a powerful lesson about the fragility of life, even for the very biggest of creatures. So, from the sea monsters of the Cretaceous to the gentle giants of the Ice Age, we see a recurring theme. The world is in constant flux, and the ability to adapt is the key to survival. The giants of the past, as mighty as they were, ultimately couldn't keep up with the changes in their environment and the rise of new competitors. Their stories are a fascinating and sometimes tragic window into the deep history of our planet. Picture this: a world ruled by giants, where fearsome predators with dagger-like teeth roamed the land. This was the era of the saber-toothed cat, one of the most powerful hunters to ever walk the earth. For thousands of years, these magnificent beasts, known scientifically as Smilodon, were at the very top of the food chain. Their most iconic feature? Those incredible 7-inch long canine teeth. These weren't just for show. They were lethal weapons, perfectly evolved to take down enormous prey. Imagine a saber-tooth ambushing a woolly mammoth or a giant ground sloth. They would use their immense upper body's strength to wrestle the massive animal down, then deliver a precise, fatal bite to the throat. It was a brutal, efficient strategy that made them the undisputed kings of the prehistoric plains. Their entire anatomy was built for power. Unlike the cheetahs of today, which are built for speed, saber-toothed cats were ambush predators. They had short, powerful legs and a muscular, almost bear-like build. This allowed them to launch explosive attacks from cover, overwhelming their prey with sheer force rather than a long chase. Their jaws could open to an astounding 120 degrees, far wider than any modern cat, which was necessary to clear those enormous fangs for a killing strike. For millennia, this formula worked perfectly. They thrived across North and South America, their fossils telling a story of dominance and power. But as we all know, no reign lasts forever. An invisible clock was ticking, and the world was about to change in a way that even these apex predators couldn't adapt to. The end of the Ice Age, about 10,000 years ago, was the beginning of the end for the saber-toothed cats. The climate warmed, glaciers retreated, and the entire ecosystem began to shift. The vast, cold grasslands that supported their massive prey started to transform into forests and different types of terrain. This change in vegetation had a catastrophic domino effect. The giant herbivores that saber-tooths relied on, like mammoths, mastodons, giant bison, and ground sloths, began to disappear. Their food sources became scarce, and suddenly, the saber-tooth's highly specialized hunting strategy became its greatest weakness. They were too slow and heavily built to effectively hunt the smaller, faster animals like deer and pronghorn that began to populate the new landscape. But climate change wasn't their only problem. A new, highly intelligent predator was also expanding its territory: humans. Early human hunters were incredibly effective and were also targeting the same large game animals. This created direct competition for a dwindling food supply. Not only that, but human expansion fragmented the saber-tooth's hunting grounds, shrinking their available territory. As if that wasn't enough, they also faced pressure from other predators. Packs of dire wolves, for example, were highly successful pack hunters and could likely outcompete a solitary saber-tooth for a kill or scavenge their hard-earned meals. This combination of a changing environment, a vanishing food source, and intense competition created a perfect storm. The final nail in the coffin was likely their slow reproductive rate. Like many large predators today, saber-toothed cats probably had long gestation periods and raised only a few cubs at a time, investing a great deal of energy into each one. This strategy works well in a stable environment, but when faced with rapid change and mounting threats, their populations simply couldn't bounce back fast enough. As prey vanished and competition increased, mortality rates soared while birth rates plummeted. One by one, the last populations flickered out across the Americas. Today, their legacy is preserved in places like the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles, where thousands of their skeletons have been found trapped in asphalt alongside the very prey they hunted. These bones are a chilling reminder of their incredible power and a poignant testament to how even the mightiest can fall. Their extinction remains one of prehistory's most fascinating mysteries, a cautionary tale written in bone and tar. Now, let's travel forward in time and across the globe to a small, isolated island in the Indian Ocean called Mauritius. Here lived a bird unlike any other, the dodo. The dodo was a large, flightless bird, a distant relative of the pigeon. Having evolved for millions of years in a paradise with no natural predators, the dodo had no reason to be afraid. It lived a peaceful life, wandering the forest floor, foraging for fallen fruits. Its fearlessness was a product of its environment. It simply had never encountered a creature that meant it harm. This trusting nature, which defined its existence for so long, would tragically become its fatal flaw. It was on innocence that the world would not forgive. In 1598, the world of the dodo was shattered. Dutch sailors landed on Mauritius, the first humans to set foot on the island. To these weary sailors, the dodo was a walking meal. The birds, having no instinct to flee, would simply waddle up to the newcomers out of curiosity. They were ridiculously easy to catch. The sailors hunted them for food, and while their meat was reportedly not very tasty, it was a convenient source of fresh protein. This was the first major blow to the dodo population, But the direct hunting by humans was only part of the story. The real devastation came from the uninvited guests the sailors brought with them. The ships that arrived on Mauritius were like Trojan horses, carrying stowaways that would completely unravel the island's delicate ecosystem. Rats, pigs, and monkeys escaped from the ships and established themselves on the island. For the dodo, these new animals were an unprecedented disaster. The dodos laid their single, large egg in a simple nest on the ground. This had been a safe strategy for eons, but now it made them incredibly vulnerable. The pigs would trample the nests and eat the eggs. The rats would swarm the nests, devouring the eggs and even the helpless chicks. The dodos, having never evolved any defensive behaviors, were powerless to stop them. They couldn't fight off these new invaders, nor could they fly away to build safer nests in trees. The combination of being hunted by humans and having their nests relentlessly raided by invasive species was a death sentence. The dodo's population plummeted at a shocking rate. Remember, this was a species that had thrived for millennia in isolation. In less than a century after the arrival of humans, it was completely gone. The last confirmed sighting of a dodo was in 1662. It vanished so quickly that for a long time, some people even doubted it had ever existed, thinking it was just a myth. The dodo went from being a living, breathing species to extinct in the blink of an evolutionary eye. Today, the dodo exists only in history books, a few contemporary drawings, and scattered bone fragments. We have no photographs, no taxidermy specimens, only a handful of partial skeletons. Scientists still study these remains, trying to piece together the life of this unusual bird. The story of the dodo became the ultimate symbol of extinction, a powerful lesson in the devastating impact humans can have on the natural world. It was one of the first times people recognized that a species could be wiped out forever by our actions, and its legacy lives on in our language. When we say something is dead as a dodo, we are invoking the memory of this gentle, trusting bird, a ghost from a lost world reminding us of the fragility of life and the responsibility we hold in our hands. The tails of the saber-toothed cat and the dodo are separated by thousands of years and thousands of miles, yet they tell a similar, sobering story. One was a fearsome apex predator, the other a peaceful island dweller, but both were victims of a changing world they could not adapt to. The saber-tooth shows us that even the most powerful can be brought down by environmental shifts and competition. The dodo shows us that even the most innocent can be erased by carelessness and invasive forces. Their stories are not just relics of the past. They are urgent warnings for our present. As we face our own environmental challenges today, let's remember these lost species. Let's learn from their fate and strive to protect the incredible biodiversity that still shares our planet. Meet the great aurochs, massive wild cattle that once thundered across the vast landscapes of Europe and Asia. Picture an animal far larger, stronger, and more ferocious than any modern cow you've ever seen. These were the untamed ancestors of the domestic cattle we know today. Thousands of years ago, our ancient predecessors embarked on a revolutionary journey. They began domesticating the smaller, more manageable aurochs, a process that would forever change human civilization and give us the cows that fill our farms. But while domestic cattle flourished, their wild cousins faced a grim future. Relentless hunting by humans, who saw them as both a source of food and a dangerous threat, began to take its toll. The pressure mounted as human populations grew. Vast forests, the aurochs' natural home, were cleared to make way for farmland, systematically destroying their grazing lands and shrinking their world. To make matters worse, the very animals that descended from them became a new threat. Diseases from domesticated cattle, to which the wild aurochs had no immunity, spread like wildfire through their dwindling herds. The combination of hunting, habitat loss, and disease was a death sentence. The wild aurochs were pushed to the brink, cornered into smaller and smaller pockets of wilderness. By the 1600s, only a single, small herd remained, protected in a royal forest in Poland. But even this last sanctuary wasn't enough. In 1627, the last known aurochs, a female, died, marking the final, silent end of a species. Its extinction severed one of humanity's oldest and most significant relationships with the animal kingdom. The aurochs had been a part of our world for millennia, a symbol of wild power and a key figure in our journey towards civilization. Yet, their story doesn't completely end there. The legend of the aurochs lives on, immortalized in ancient cave paintings, myths, and stories passed down through generations. And today, a new chapter is being written. Ambitious scientific projects are using advanced DNA technology and selective breeding of ancient cattle breeds to try and backbreed an animal that resembles the aurochs. They aim to resurrect this magnificent creature, to bring back a ghost from the past and restore a piece of our lost natural heritage. Now, let us travel from the ancient forests of Europe to the rugged landscapes of Australia to uncover the story of another lost icon, the Tasmanian tiger, officially known as the thylacine. This creature was a true enigma. With a wolf-like head, powerful jaws, and distinctive tiger-like stripes across its back, it looked like a creature straight out of myth. But despite its canine appearance, the thylacine was not a dog or a wolf. It was a marsupial, the largest carnivorous marsupial of modern times, carrying its young in a pouch just like a kangaroo. For thousands of years, the thylacine was the apex predator of Tasmania. But its fate was sealed when European settlers arrived. They saw the thylacine not as a unique marvel of nature, but as a vicious sheep killer and a threat to their livelihood. A war was declared on the Tasmanian tiger. Bounties were placed on its head, encouraging farmers and professional bounty hunters to kill them on sight. This government-sanctioned slaughter led to the hunting of thousands of thylacines. The campaign was brutally effective. Alongside the relentless hunting, the thylacines faced the same threat. That doomed the aurochs, habitat loss, as forests were cleared for agriculture and human settlements. Their territories shrank, pushing them into smaller and more fragmented areas. This concentration of the population made them even more vulnerable. Just like with the aurochs, diseases, likely introduced by domestic dogs brought by the settlers, swept through the stressed and weakened thylacine populations, accelerating their decline. The last wild thylacine was shot in 1930. The final nail in the coffin came on September 7, 1936, when the last known thylacine, A male named Benjamin died alone in his enclosure at the Hobart Zoo. In a tragic irony, the species was granted official protection just 59 days before Benjamin's death, a classic case of too little, too late. For decades, the thylacine was considered well and truly extinct. But is it? The story has a mysterious epilogue. Over the years, grainy photographs and blurry videos have emerged, accompanied by hundreds of unconfirmed sightings from the remote wilderness of Tasmania. These tantalizing glimpses have sparked a fierce debate and fueled the hope that a small, hidden population might have survived against all odds. Using preserved DNA from museum specimens, scientists are working on a project that sounds like science fiction, cloning the thylacine and bringing it back to life. While the challenges are immense, the dream of seeing a Tasmanian tiger walk the earth again persists. The story of the thylacine serves as a haunting and powerful reminder of the devastating impact of human ignorance and negligence. It is a symbol of what we stand to lose when we fail to understand and coexist with the natural world. The stories of the aurochs and the thylacine are tragic, but they are also stories of hope and a call to action. They show us the fragility of life and the irreversible consequences of our actions. But they also highlight our incredible capacity for innovation and our deep-seated desire to right the wrongs of the past. These de-extinction projects, whether they succeed or not, force us to ask big questions. Restoring an animal to the world is one thing, but can we also restore the wild habitats they need to survive? As we push the boundaries of science, we must also work harder than ever to protect the countless species that are currently on the brink. The best way to honor the memory of the aurochs and the thylacine is to ensure no more species shall their fate. The Caribbean monk seal once glided through those beautiful tropical waters. They were known for being incredibly friendly and curious, which, sadly, made them an easy target for humans. From the moment Columbus first encountered them, sailors and colonists began hunting them relentlessly. They wanted them for their oil, which was used for lamps and lubrication, as well as for their meat and leather. This hunting pressure was immense and continued for centuries. But it wasn't just direct hunting that sealed their fate. The rise of commercial fishing in their habitat meant their food sources, fish, crustaceans, and octopus, started to disappear. Imagine trying to find dinner when massive fishing fleets are scooping up everything in sight. As if that wasn't enough, pollution and coastal development destroyed the beaches and coves they needed for resting and raising their pups. Their safe havens were disappearing right before their eyes. By the 1950s, the once abundant Caribbean monk seal was gone. The last confirmed sighting was in 1952 at the Serenilla Bank, a small reef between Jamaica and Nicaragua. For decades, scientists held out hope, conducting extensive searches. But after more than 50 years with no credible sightings, they had to face the inevitable. In 2008, the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration officially declared the Caribbean monk seal extinct. Their extinction wasn't just the loss of a single species. It was a blow to the entire ecosystem. Monk seals were a key part of the coral reef food web, helping to maintain balance. Without them, The intricate web of life was permanently damaged. The story of the Caribbean monk seal is a powerful and tragic reminder of what can happen when human activities go unchecked. It's a warning about the devastating impacts of overhunting, overfishing, and pollution. The Caribbean is a little less magical, and the oceans are a little emptier without its gentle, curious seal. Now, let's travel back in time, much further back, to the end of the last ice age. Picture a creature so grand, it makes today's largest deer look small. This was the Irish elk, also known as Megaloceros giganteus, despite its name. It wasn't exclusively Irish and wasn't technically an elk. It was the largest deer that ever lived. Its most stunning feature, its massive antlers. These weren't just big, they were colossal, spanning up to 12 feet from tip to tip and weighing nearly 90 pounds. That's wider than a small car. These majestic animals roamed across the vast grasslands of Europe and Asia. For the male Irish elk, these enormous antlers were a symbol of strength and dominance, used to attract mates and intimidate rivals. But this impressive headgear came at a huge cost. Growing such massive antlers each year required a tremendous amount of energy and nutrients, especially calcium and phosphate. The elk had to consume vast quantities of nutrient-rich plants just to support their growth. During the Ice Age, when open, grassy steppes were widespread. This was manageable. They had plenty of food and space to thrive. But then, the climate began to change. As the glaciers retreated and the world warmed up, the environment transformed. The open plains that the Irish elk depended on began to shrink, replaced by dense, sprawling forests. This new landscape was a double disaster for them. Firstly, their food sources declined. The types of plants they needed became scarcer in the shady woodlands. Secondly, their gigantic antlers, once a sign of power, became a major handicap. Imagine trying to navigate through thick trees and dense undergrowth with a 12-foot wide rack on your head. It was clumsy, difficult, and often got them stuck, making them vulnerable to predators. As if environmental changes weren't enough, human hunters also entered the scene. Early humans were skilled predators and would have seen the giant deer as a prime source of meat. Facing malnutrition from a lack of proper food and the physical challenges of a changing habitat, the added pressure from human hunting was the final blow. The already weakened herds simply couldn't withstand this new threat. The last Irish elk is believed to have died out in Siberia nearly 8,000 years ago, marking the end of a magnificent lineage. Today, the Irish elk lives on only through its incredible fossils. Their massive, well-preserved skeletons are showstoppers in museums all over the world. When you stand before one, you can't help but feel a sense of awe at their sheer size and majesty. They are a powerful symbol of the great megafauna that once roamed our planet, and a stark reminder of how dramatically our world can change. Their story shows us that even the most impressive and seemingly powerful creatures are vulnerable when their environment shifts beneath their feet. It's a lesson from the deep past that still resonates today, reminding us of the delicate balance between species and their habitats. First up, let's travel to the cold, unforgiving waters of the Arctic. Imagine a creature so immense and so peaceful it seems like something out of a fairy tale. This was the Steller's sea cow. Picture a manatee, but on a colossal scale, growing up to 30 feet long and weighing as much as 10 tons. These enormous marine herbivores lived a quiet existence, grazing on kelp forests in the shallow coastal waters round the Bering Sea. They were slow, gentle, and had no natural predators, spending their days in tight-knit family groups, communicating with sighs and snorts. Their peaceful world was shattered in the mid-1700s when European sailors first encountered them. For these weary explorers, the sea cows represented a massive, easily accessible source of food and resources. Their meat was said to be delicious, and their thick blubber could be rendered into oil for lamps. The tragedy of the Steller's sea cow lies in its trusting and slow-moving nature. These gentle giants were completely defenseless against human hunters. Sailors in small boats could simply approach the floating animals and strike them with harpoons, because they were so social. When one was injured, others in the group would often try to help, making them easy targets as well. The hunt was relentless. What followed was one of the most shockingly rapid extinctions in recorded history. Within a mere 27 years of their discovery by modern science, the last Steller's sea cow was killed. Their entire species was wiped out before we ever had a chance to truly study them, to understand their behaviors, their social structures, or their role in the marine ecosystem. Habitat destruction, particularly the overharvesting of sea otters, which in turn led to an explosion of sea urchins that devoured the kelp forests, also contributed to their downfall. The Arctic seas have never seen another creature like them, and their story serves as a heartbreaking reminder of how quickly a species can be lost forever. Their gentle nature makes their extinction particularly tragic. A silent giant erased from the world in the blink of an eye. Now, let's shift continents and travel much further back in time, to a prehistoric North America that looked very different from today. When you think of a cheetah, you probably picture the sun-drenched savannas of Africa. But what if I told you that a cheetah-like predator once sprinted across the plains of Wyoming, Texas, and Nevada? Meet the great American cheetah, one of North America's most mysterious lost predators. Few people know that these incredible cats, scientifically known as Marathononyx, roamed the continent long before their African relatives became the icons of speed we know today. Fossils reveal their striking resemblance to modern cheetahs, with a similar slender build, long legs, and flexible spinal adaptations for incredible speed and agility. They were perfectly designed to chase down their primary prey, the ancient pronghorn. Pronghorns are famous for being the fastest land animals in North America, capable of reaching speeds over 55 miles per hour. For a long time, scientists were puzzled by this. Why would an animal evolve to be so fast when there were no predators left that could catch it? The answer was the American cheetah. For thousands of years, an evolutionary arms race played out across the open plains, with the cheetah pushing the pronghorn to become faster, and the pronghorn's speed ensuring only the fastest cheetahs could eat. But this dynamic couldn't last forever. The world began to change. As the last ice age ended, climate shifts altered the landscape, reducing the open grasslands these animals depended on. This meant less habitat and fewer pronghorns to hunt. At the same time, new competitors arrived on the scene. evolving wolves that hunted in packs, and powerful big cats like saber-toothed cats and American lions increased the pressure. The final blow came with the arrival of early humans, who were highly effective hunters and added another threat to the cheetah's survival. Over thousands of years, this combination of factors led to a gradual decline. Eventually, the great American cheetah vanished, leaving the pronghorn without its ancient dance partner. Its disappearance allowed the pronghorn population to thrive, forever holding onto a speed it no longer needed. The story of the American cheetah is a ghost story written in the fossil record, a whisper of a forgotten speed demon that once ruled the American plains. Finally, we fly to the islands of New Zealand to meet a predator so formidable it became the stuff of legend. This was the Host's eagle, the largest and most powerful eagle ever known to exist. This was no ordinary bird of prey. The Host's eagle was an apex predator of terrifying proportions. Females, which were larger than males, could weigh up to 33 pounds with a wingspan stretching over 10 feet. But its most fearsome feature was its weaponry. Its talons were as large as a tiger's claws, powerful enough to pierce bone instantly. It was a bird built not for soaring long distances, but for short, incredibly powerful bursts of speed, diving from a high perch to ambush its prey with devastating force. And what was its prey? The eagle dominated the skies by hunting another one of New Zealand's lost giants, the moa. Moas were enormous flightless birds, some species standing up to 12 feet tall and weighing over 500 pounds. The Host's eagle was the only predator capable of taking down such massive prey. For centuries, this relationship defined the ecosystem. The eagle was the undisputed king of the skies. Early Maori settlers, who arrived around the year 1300, knew of the eagle's terrifying power. Their legends describe it as the Puakai or Hokioi, a monstrous, man-eating sky demon that could swoop down and carry away children. While it's unlikely they preyed on humans, the legends speak to the sheer awe and fear this incredible bird inspired. But the eagle's specialization was also its weakness. Its entire existence was tied to the moa. When humans arrived, they began hunting the large, slow-moving moa for food. Within a couple of 100 years, all 9 species of moa were hunted to extinction, with its primary food source gone. The Host's eagle was doomed. There were no other large animals left to sustain it. The majestic predator starved, and the species disappeared entirely. Just a few centuries after the moa vanished. The extinction of the Host's eagle is a stark example of a domino effect. It shows how wiping out one species can directly lead to the end of another, unraveling the delicate threads that hold an ecosystem together. It wasn't a sky demon, but a majestic predator that lost its world when its prey was taken from it. From the gentle sea cow to the swift cheetah and the mighty eagle, these stories are more than just sad tales from the past. They are crucial lessons. They show us how fragile life can be, how interconnected ecosystems are, and how profound our impact on the planet can be. Whether it's over a few short decades or across millennia, by remembering these lost wonders, we can better appreciate the incredible biodiversity we still have, and work harder to protect it for the future. Have you ever heard of an animal going extinct not once, but twice? or a zebra that was only half-striped. The incredible, almost science fiction-like efforts to bring them back. These tales are more than just sad endings. They are powerful lessons about life, loss, and the enduring hope of science. Our first story begins on the vast, sun-drenched plains of South Africa. Imagine a creature that looks like it was pulled from two different worlds. This was the quagga. At first glance, it looked like a zebra, but only its front half was covered in bold, dark stripes. As you looked towards its rear, the stripes would fade away, leaving a plain, brownish coat, more like a horse. This unique and beautiful pattern made the quagga a true standout in the animal kingdom. It wasn't just another zebra. It was a living piece of art, a testament to nature's creativity. For centuries, herds of quaggas roamed freely, a common sight across the Karoo region. They were a vital part of the ecosystem, grazing alongside wildebeest and ostriches. But when European settlers arrived, the quagga's world began to shrink. Its stunning hide became a coveted prize, and its meat a source of food. The settlers hunted them relentlessly, seeing them not as a unique species, but as a resource to be exploited. The pressure didn't stop there. As farms and settlements expanded, the quagga's natural habitat disappeared. The grassy plains they relied on were converted into pastures for livestock. Suddenly, the quaggas found themselves competing for food and water with sheep and cattle. Their numbers, once abundant, began to plummet. It was a classic, tragic story of a wild animal being pushed out by human expansion. The combination of overhunting and habitat loss was a fatal blow. By the late 1800s, the once thriving herds had vanished. The last wild quagga was likely shot in the 1870s, and the very last of its kind. A mare living in an Amsterdam zoo died in 1883. Just like that, the half-striped zebra was gone forever. For decades, its extinction was considered one of Africa's greatest wildlife tragedies, a permanent loss of a unique species. The world was left with nothing but a few grainy photographs, some preserved skins, and a deep sense of regret. But the quagga's story didn't end there. Over a century later, science offered a glimmer of hope. Researchers analyzed DNA from old quagga skins and made a groundbreaking discovery. The quagga wasn't a completely separate species of zebra after all. It was a subspecies of the plains zebra, the common zebras we still see across Africa today. This meant its unique genetic code wasn't entirely lost. It was simply diluted and scattered among its living relatives. This revelation sparked an audacious idea. Could we bring the quagga back? The Quagga Project was born. Scientists began a process of selective breeding, choosing plains zebras that showed quagga-like characteristics, fewer stripes on their hindquarters, and a brownish body color. Generation after generation, they bred these specific zebras, aiming to concentrate those dormant genes and, in essence, recreate an animal that looks and behaves just like the original quagga. Today, this project has produced several generations of what are called raw quaggas. Named after the project's founder, these animals look remarkably similar to the extinct originals, with their faint stripes and earthy tones. While they aren't genetically identical, they represent a powerful symbol of de-extinction. The quagga's story is no longer just about loss. It is about our ability to learn from our mistakes and use science to try and mend the damage we've done. The sight of these animals, once lost to history, now grazing again on South African plains, is a powerful reminder of both nature's fragility and its incredible resilience. Now, let us travel from the plains of Africa to the rugged mountains of Europe for an even more dramatic story of extinction and resurrection. High in the Pyrenees mountains that separate Spain and France lived the Pyrenean ibex. This was a magnificent wild goat, known for its large, curved horns and its breathtaking agility. It could navigate the steepest, most treacherous cliffs with an ease that defied gravity, making it a true master of its mountain home. For thousands of years, the ibex thrived in this harsh, beautiful environment. But, much like the quagga, its fate was sealed by human activity. It was relentlessly hunted, both for sport and for food. At the same time, its habitat began to shrink as human settlements and agriculture encroached on the mountains. To make matters worse, diseases spread from domestic livestock, further decimating the already struggling population. By the 20th century, the Pyrenean ibex was critically endangered. Conservation efforts came too late. The numbers continued to dwindle until only one remained. Her name was Celia, the last known Pyrenean ibex on Earth. Scientists monitored her closely, hoping for a miracle. But in the year 2000, tragedy struck. Celia was found dead, crushed by a falling tree. With her death, the Pyrenean ibex was officially declared extinct. It was a somber moment, marking the end of a species that had roamed those mountains for millennia. But just before Celia died, scientists had taken a skin sample and preserved her cells. This led to a bold, unprecedented scientific experiment, an attempt to clone an extinct animal. Using Celia's DNA, they created an embryo and implanted it into a surrogate mother, a domestic goat. The world watched with bated breath. In 2003, the impossible happened. A clone of the Pyrenean ibex was born. For a few fleeting moments, the species was back. However, the victory was short-lived. The newborn clone struggled to breathe and died within minutes due to a lung defect. The joy of its birth was immediately replaced by the sorrow of its death. This event gave the Pyrenean ibex a unique and heartbreaking distinction. It became the first and only animal to have gone extinct twice. The attempt to bring it back had failed, and this time, the extinction felt even more final. Yet, Celia's story is not one of complete failure. The cloning attempt, though unsuccessful, was a landmark moment in science. It pushed the boundaries of what we thought was possible and provided invaluable lessons for the future of conservation. Scientists learned about the immense challenges and ethical questions surrounding de-extinction. The loss of the ibex also sent shockwaves through the conservation community, highlighting the fragility of biodiversity. Its disappearance weakened the entire ecosystem of the Pyrenees, a stark reminder that every species plays a role. The story of Celia and her short-lived clone fueled a new wave of urgency and dedication to protecting other endangered species. It served as a powerful, cautionary tale about waiting until only one individual is left. While we may never see a Pyrenean ibex climbing the cliffs of Europe again, its memory is forever preserved in scientific history. It reminds us that extinction is not just an abstract concept. It's the silent, final disappearance of a unique form of life. The stories of the quagga and the Pyrrhon ibex are two sides of the same coin. One represents a hopeful, ongoing effort to reverse a past mistake, while the other serves as a sobering reminder of the finality of extinction. This was the golden toad, a tiny, brilliant orange amphibian that lived in a small, high-altitude cloud forest in Costa Rica. Its existence was a miracle of nature, perfectly adapted to a very specific, moist environment. But its world was fragile. As global temperatures began to rise, the cloud forests that were its only home started to dry up. The once constant mist and moisture that protected the toads began to disappear. This wasn't their only problem. The changing climate allowed a deadly fungal disease to spread like wildfire through the amphibian populations. The golden toad had no natural defense against this new threat. They were incredibly vulnerable, and the combination of a drying habitat and a devastating plague was too much for them to handle. The population crashed with terrifying speed. Within just a few years, the entire species, once a vibrant jewel of the forest, was gone forever. Scientists now point to the golden toad as one of the first and clearest casualties of modern climate change. The forest floor grew quieter and a little dimmer without their brilliant colors. Their sudden disappearance sent a shockwave through the scientific community and became a global symbol of the delicate balance of our planet's ecosystems and the profound impact of environmental decline. Even today, the story of the lost golden toad inspires conservation movements, a constant reminder of what we stand to lose. Now, imagine looking up at the sky and seeing it turn dark, not from a storm, but from a flock of birds so vast it would take hours to pass. This was the reality in North America with the passenger pigeon. They were once the most numerous bird on the continent, with a population estimated in the billions. Their flocks were a true spectacle of nature, a seemingly endless river of life in the sky. It felt like their numbers were infinite, that nothing could ever diminish such an abundant species. But this abundance made them a target. Humans began hunting them on an industrial scale. They were easy to kill, and their meat was cheap. Hunters would descend on their nesting sites and wipe out entire flocks in a single day. At the same time, deforestation was destroying the vast forests they relied on for food and breeding. Their survival strategy was based on their massive numbers. They needed huge flocks to breed successfully. As their numbers were decimated by hunting and habitat loss, this strategy collapsed. The flocks became too small to sustain themselves, and the population went into a freefall. The decline was shockingly fast. By the early 1900s, they were all but gone from the wild. The last known passenger pigeon, a female named Martha, died all alone in a Cincinnati zoo in 1914. Her death marked the end of a species that had once numbered in the billions. The extinction of the passenger pigeon was a brutal wake-up call. It shocked scientists and the public, proving that even the most common species could be wiped out by human actions. In response, new conservation laws were created to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. Their story is a heartbreaking lesson in the devastating consequences of overexploitation. A reminder that no species is too common to be lost forever. Let's dive deep into the ancient oceans, a time when a true monster ruled the waters. This was the era of the great Megalodon, the largest and most powerful shark that ever lived. It was an apex predator of epic proportions, growing up to 60 feet long with jaws so immense and powerful they could crush the bones of a whale. For millions of years, the Megalodon was the undisputed king of the sea, dominating ocean ecosystems across the globe. It was a perfectly evolved predator for the warm, teeming waters of its time. But even the mightiest rulers can fall. The world began to change. Global climate shifts caused ocean temperatures to cool down, shrinking the warm water habitats the Megalodon relied on. At the same time, new, intelligent predators were evolving. Early forms of killer whales emerged, hunting in packs and competing with the giant shark for food. The Megalodon's main prey, the large whales, also adapted, migrating to the newly formed colder polar regions where the warm-blooded Megalodon could not follow. Trapped between a cooling climate and increasing competition, its reign began to crumble. Its populations weakened and dwindled over thousands of years until, finally, there were none left. All that remains of this ancient giant are its massive teeth, fossilized relics that still wash up on beaches all over the world. Each one is a testament to the sheer scale of this lost creature. The myth of the Megalodon continues to capture our imaginations, a symbol of ultimate power and a time when monsters were real. And somehow, knowing it's gone, the ocean just feels a little smaller without its giant, ancient ruler. We look at the towering bones of a Tyrannosaurus rex or the elegant tusks of a woolly mammoth, and we feel a sense of awe, maybe even a little sadness. We call their story extinction, the final, silent chapter for countless species that once roamed our planet. But what if extinction isn't just an ending? What if it's also a lesson? A powerful, urgent message left behind for us, the inheritors of this world. Today, we're going to journey back through time, not just to witness the fall of these incredible animals, but to understand the profound story they tell. This isn't a story about failure or weakness. It's a story about change, about resilience, and ultimately about the choices we face right now. Let's start by clearing up a common misconception. When we think of extinction, we often picture a singular, cataclysmic event, like the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs. And while that was certainly a dramatic moment in Earth's history, the story of extinction is far more complex and varied. In reality, our planet has experienced at least 5 major mass extinction events, long before humans ever walked the Earth. Each one was a massive reset button, a profound crisis that reshaped the very fabric of life. The Permian-Triassic extinction, often called the Great Dying, was the most severe. It wiped out over 90% of all marine species and 70% of terrestrial life. Imagine a world almost completely silenced. The causes are still debated, but massive volcanic eruptions, releasing colossal amounts of greenhouse gases, likely triggered runaway climate change. The oceans became acidic, and the atmosphere was starved of oxygen. Life, in all its abundance, was pushed to the absolute brink. But here's the crucial part. After the silence, life didn't just give up. The survivors, the few, the hardy, stepped into a world of new possibilities. In the wake of the Great Dying, new groups of animals, including the early ancestors of the dinosaurs, began to flourish. Each extinction, no matter how devastating, cleared the stage for a new act in the grand play of evolution. The fall of one group created the opportunity for another to rise. The end of the dinosaurs, 66 million years ago, wasn't just the end of their reign. It was the dawn of the age of mammals. It paved the way for our own distant ancestors to emerge from the shadows and eventually give rise to the world we know today. So, extinction isn't just a story of loss. It's a story of transformation. It's the engine of radical change, demonstrating the incredible, stubborn resilience of life itself. But what drives these monumental shifts? It's rarely just one thing. It's a perfect storm of interconnected factors. Take climate change, for example. Long before industrial smokestacks, the Earth's climate has always been in flux. Ice ages came and went, covering vast continents in glaciers and then retreating, reshaping coastlines and habitats. Animals adapted to these slow, gradual changes over millennia. The woolly mammoth, for instance, was perfectly suited for the cold, with its thick fur and layers of fat. But when the last ice age ended and the planet warmed rapidly, the vast grassy steppes they relied on for food transformed into forests and wetlands. Their world literally disappeared from under their feet. The climate changed faster than they could adapt or find new homes. Natural disasters also play a starring role. We've mentioned the asteroid, a classic example of a sudden, catastrophic event. But on a smaller scale, volcanoes, massive floods, and prolonged droughts have acted as regional architects of extinction for eons. A single volcanic eruption can blanket a region in ash, poisoning water sources and blocking out the sun, leading to a collapse of the local food web. Then there's competition. Life is a constant dance of predator and prey, of species vying for the same resources. Sometimes a new, more efficient competitor arrives on the scene. Think of the Great American Biotic Interchange. When North and South America connected millions of years ago, animals that had evolved in isolation for eons suddenly met new rivals. Some species, like the terror birds of South America, formidable predators in their own right, eventually lost out to more adaptable mammalian carnivores from the north. It's a complex, interwoven tapestry of causes, and it's crucial to understand this, because it leads us to a fundamental truth. Animals that went extinct were not failures. They weren't weak, or flawed, or less deserving of life. The dodo wasn't stupid. The mammoth wasn't lazy. They were masters of their environment, perfectly adapted to a world that, for them, was stable and predictable. Their only crime was that the world changed faster than evolution could keep up. Their disappearance is a stark reminder that even the most dominant, successful, and powerful species are vulnerable when the fundamental rules of their world are rewritten. Their bones, preserved in stone, are more than just relics. They are a library of warnings. They whisper of a planet in constant motion, of ecosystems balanced on a knife's edge. They show us how a few degrees of temperature change, a shift in sea level, or the arrival of a new species can trigger a cascade of consequences that unravels an entire web of life. The story of every fossil is a testament to how fragile this beautiful, intricate balance truly is. And this brings the story crashing into our present moment. Because today, modern species are facing many of the same dangers their ancient ancestors faced. Climate change is happening again, but this time at a pace far faster than most natural cycles. We're seeing habitat loss on an unprecedented scale, as forests are cleared for agriculture and cities expand. We're witnessing the introduction of invasive species, disrupting ecosystems that have been stable for thousands of years. But there is one monumental difference between the extinctions of the past and the crisis we face today. For the first time in Earth's 4.5 billion year history, a single species holds the power to consciously decide the fate of countless others. US. The asteroid didn't know the consequences of its impact. The volcanoes of the Permian era didn't have a choice. The shifting continents were just geology in motion. But we are different. We have the knowledge to understand the consequences of our actions. We have the science to track the health of our planet's ecosystems. We see the numbers. We monitor the declining populations. We understand the intricate connections that we are severing. Every species that has gone extinct in the modern era, the passenger pigeon, the Tasmanian tiger, the western black rhino, tells a story not of natural cycles, but of human decisions. The passenger pigeon, once so numerous its flocks darkened the sky for days, was hunted to extinction for cheap food. The Tasmanian tiger was systematically eliminated because it was perceived as a threat to livestock. The rhino was poached into oblivion for its horn. These were not acts of nature. They were the results of greed, of fear, of ignorance, and of apathy. But just as we hold the power to destroy, we also hold the power to protect. We have the ability to create national parks and marine sanctuaries. We have the technology to reforest landscapes and clean our rivers. We have the capacity for empathy, to see the value in a creature beyond its utility to us. We have the power to make different choices. This is the final, most important lesson that the ghosts of the past have for us. The future of Earth's wildlife, the fate of the elephants, tigers, whales, and the millions of smaller, less famous species that form the foundation of our world's ecosystems, now rests in our hands. Their survival depends entirely on the lessons we choose to learn from the stories written in stone. The story of extinct creatures is a somber warning. It teaches us that extinction is forever. There are no second chances. Once a species is gone, its unique genetic code, its specific role in its ecosystem, its particular way of experiencing the world, is lost for all time. We might be able to clone an individual one day, but we can never resurrect a species in its true, wild context. We can never rebuild the world it inhabited or the relationships it had. The silence left behind by an extinct species is a silence that can never be refilled. It's a note missing from the symphony of life. As we stand here, in the midst of what scientists are calling the sixth mass extinction, the choices we make in the coming decades will determine how much of that symphony remains. For future generations to hear, the story of extinction is no longer just about the past. It's about the future we are creating. Right now, with every decision we make, let's choose to write a different ending.